Welcome back, America. Earlier, just a few minutes ago, you got to see President Trump wrap up a speech in the great state of Kentucky. It's a commonwealth that is pretty conservative. Yeah, it has a Democratic governor, but most of the rest of the state is pretty red. But there's an extraordinary story boiling behind the scenes. 240 violent offenders may soon be released by Kentucky. The state's attorney general, the chief law enforcement officer, former FBI man himself, Russell Coleman, is working day and night to try to stop that from happening. It's a legal loophole with a really complicated story, but it is one that could have enormous impact on public safety in that great state. Earlier, before men headed over to the White House, we had a great conversation with the Kentucky attorney general, Russell Coleman. Have a watch. It's an amazing story.
Well, and thank you, because there are 240 criminals at stake here, and we're not just talking petty crimes. This is carjacking, strangulation, homicide, attempted murder. These are not, like I said, this is not petty crimes. Why on earth are they being considered for release?
Well, backing up, we're so grateful that I'm able to join you with a partner in Washington, D.C., a partner that's helping ensure that our borders are secure, helping with the assistance of federal law enforcement, with the talented prosecutors of the Justice Department as colleagues. We're finally there again after the re-election of President Trump and his administration. But what we're finding in states like Kentucky, we have a General Assembly, supermajority Republican General Assembly that's passing great policy that makes sense. And 2 years ago, they passed a common sense measure called the Safer Kentucky Act. What it did was, just as the nomenclature indicates, it took, amongst a number of other public safety measures, it took very concerning offenses. We're talking strangulation, manslaughter, multiple abuses, types of abuse of kids, rape and sodomy. And it said these folks, because of the inherent violence of these type of offenses, truth in sentencing, they need to serve at least 85%, a lot like the federal system, before they are eligible for parole. They were serving 20% before that, 85%. And wouldn't you know it, class action of some of these very same criminals have challenged this measure. And unless the Kentucky Court of Appeals acts, because of the action of a single judge, 240 of these violent offenders are going to be released to counties, potentially released to counties across our Commonwealth.
There's an amazing dynamic, sir, going on in our country, and that is that it seems like the bad guys get portrayed as the good guys, and the good guys, or the people or the victims, get portrayed today as the bad guys. How did that perversion of the system go? How did so many young people come to think it's a good idea to let the bad people on the street and not worry about the good people who get victimized by them?
Well, it's an oversimplification for me to cast aspersions and throw bombs at others in the media, others that aren't you. That's why Real America's Voice, that's why Just the News is so important. And my hat's off to you. The media played a big role, has played a big role in that, and how they portray our heroes. The men and women, John, Amanda, that are going to be out there tonight when we're safe in our beds, they're heroes. Now, occasionally we have a bad actor in law enforcement, just as with any profession. But as the chief law enforcement officer of this Commonwealth, I get to work with some amazing men and women. And we need to continuously uplift and point the finger in a positive way at those that are doing this amazing work. Let me take one of those offenses that would be released for only serving 20%, strangulation. We know that not only if someone is willing to put their hands around a victim's throat, we know that it's a high likelihood that that offender will not only commit a homicide against a domestic partner, intimate violence, a child. We know the data says that roughly 80% of those that kill police officers have committed a strangulation offense. We know that when they are allowed out, if allowed out, our men and women, our troopers, our deputies, our officers are going to be put at great risk.
Amazing statistic.
Absolutely. Well, and it makes me think of broken window policing, because I remember back when that was utilized and was highly successful, you had an instance where a quote unquote lesser crime, although I would argue the strangulation is not a lesser crime of practically anything, but it indicates a future crime, something that is much, much more violent. Do you find that happens there in Kentucky? Is this something that is considered accepted doctrine?
Well, that's what the data says. And that is why our legislature carved out strangulation a few years ago, made it a separate felony offense and an aggravated felony offense. We're seeing good policy, again, coming out of supermajority legislatures like ours. The challenge is courts that aren't applying common sense. This is not rocket science. This is the need to apply common sense in our judicial system. And unfortunately, that is not happening in many places across the country. And even in red states, conservative states, pro law enforcement states like the Commonwealth of Kentucky, it is still a challenge here.
So I bumped into a lot of people in the last few months who are praising the work you're doing to call attention to Roblox and the social gaming platforms where young children think they're in a safe environment, but often can get lured into very dangerous circumstances or weaponization of their own thoughts. Talk a little bit about what you've learned about Roblox and why you've been so adamant in educating parents about it.
Well, I'm a dad before I'm the Attorney General. I'm a dad when I go home every night, a 6-year-old and 2 teenagers. And as a law enforcement officer, though, just like as a parent, John, we go to where the threats are. We go to where the threats are. And the threats, in my time in office, the opioid battle of 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the social media fight, this being the most dangerous item in your home. And you catch a picture of my 6-year-old on the phone. That's where the battles are. That's where the threats are emanating from. And whether it's a cartoonish platform like Roblox, by the way, 280 million users a month, it is ubiquitous in our homes, Roblox. Whether it's TikTok and then insidious algorithm that's targeting particularly our young girls, whether it's Meta and the algorithms and the known conduct that puts our kids at risk, or whether it is in the AI space. And we need to be winning the AI race from a national security perspective, but we also have to make sure that the AI platforms are doing what they say they are in terms of safety. And so I also filed suit against Character AI. We're the first state in the nation to do that a few weeks ago. The social media dynamic, those platforms, that's the opioid fight of our time in office. That is where the threat is emanating to our kids.
It's terrifying.
So important.
And I mean, you hear these stories all the time about a very, very tragic ending for a child. When a child is targeted on a platform like Roblox, the perp at the other end, is it typically someone who is stateside or is it international?
So it's both. The real risk, so is two-pronged with Roblox. One, it's the content that Roblox hosts. These are things like the Charlie Kirk assassination simulator, or the Canadian shooter of a few weeks ago, the mall shooting simulator. This is stuff that kids don't unsee. You know, as believers and parents, we try to guard our kids' hearts. The fact that it's cartoonish doesn't mitigate the fact that abhorrent sexual conduct, bathroom experiences where our kids are abused. So part of it is the content. You don't unsee that stuff. Part of it is there's no what's known as age gating. We have young kids, like my son when he was 10, said he was 15, snuck on. We have young kids saying that they're older, but we have older kids, we have adults rather, saying that they're kids. Some are international, but the real risk is those that are here domestic, that are getting our kids to a secondary platform, an encrypted platform. The next thing you know, our kids are disappearing, story after story, even in these last few weeks. Some of these kids we've been able to find that are going to other states to meet these offenders. Some of these kids aren't returned home safely to their parents, unfortunately. So it is like, guys, it's like every bad science fiction movie we watched in the 80s and 90s. It's like it's coming true in this environment. I'll leave you with a book that every time I open my mouth, I recommend John Haidt's Anxious Generation, for parents, for policymakers. We have to read this book, It is great. It's the best, worst book I've read in the last 10 years.
Yeah, important stuff. Before we let you go, sir, you've been working on another very important thing to protect women's health, the rise of these abortion pills showing up in gas stations without any real medical diagnosis for them, and the protection of women really lacks. I know you've been cracking down on that. Tell us what you've learned about it thus far.
Well, we are aggressively investigating, and I want to be careful to protect the nature of our ongoing investigation. But on that front, I'll say stay tuned. What we're talking about is a gas station owner being paid a pittance to post nonprofit information out of state for an out of state entity that allows unfortunately oftentimes a disadvantaged woman in a very difficult position offers her an out. And without medical counseling, without real treatment, simply shipping this medicine into a state like Kentucky, where this is illegal under Kentucky law. So stay tuned. I have colleagues like Liz Merrill, the Attorney General in Louisiana, that's been very aggressive in this space. The Commonwealth will act. This is not acceptable. To lose life here in the Commonwealth, to circumvent our laws because someone in a state like New Jersey or New York disagrees with a law here in Kentucky. That's not how it works. And we're going to aggressively address that to protect families, protect young women here in our Commonwealth. It's just not acceptable.
Hugely important.
Mr. Attorney General, the causes that you are taking up, I think, as you said, they are the issues for this generation. They reign supreme, and we are so lucky to have you here. And the people of Kentucky are lucky to have you there.
I'm grateful for the kind words. It's a privilege to serve with amazing men and women in Kentucky law enforcement. So thank you both.